Those intros are getting better and better every time. Great job, team. I'm fortunate to have a really good team that works with me because this is not a one-man show, even though it looks like it. I'd like to welcome everybody back to the ninth conversation in the Truelogic DX series. Wow, looking back, we've had the privilege of being joined here by some of the most respected names in the industry, like we've had Donald Lim, Jonas, Javi, Jason, Laszlo, and Can, and Mr. Chucky Dreyfus. And I think we drive these conversations to bring the best the industry has to offer so that you can have actionable takeaways, whether they're actionable strategies, actionable tactics, to your business and to your brand. For me personally, it's been a privilege in the past few months having you guys here one afternoon every month. And if, for any of you that are new to these conversations, or if you missed any of the previous ones, just Google Truelogic DX and you'll find the videos both on our website, on YouTube, and on Facebook. We like to post them, wherever there's a need, wherever there's a hunger for that piece of information. For this afternoon, and like all previous conversations, I'm excited to have another guest and have another meaningful hour of insight. And this conversation is going to be about click and mortar, fashion, brand transformation, and to an extent, leadership, I think. So, welcome to the Fashioning the Retail Omnichannel Experience. And I've got a lot of questions. If you do too, use the chat box. And I will get to your questions in the last 10 to 15 minutes of the conversation. But for now, I'm going to pretend that you don't already know who my guest is this afternoon. And we're going to run a quick clip to introduce to do a quick intro of the person we have the privilege of speaking with today. Ella, take it away. That's a nice intro. So I think without further ado, and to make the most of the time we've got, uh, coming to you from the brands more popularly known to you as Penshoppe, Regatta, Oxygen, Memo, and more, I'd like to ask you to join me in welcoming Bryan. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Brent. Pleasure to be
Hi.
here. How are you?
I'm doing really good. I think afternoon weather is perfect. I'm glad the rain let up. How are you guys? It's been time flies. Like we're DX always marks the last leg of a month for me.
Mhm.
July is gone. We're past more than half the year.
Right.
I can't say I'm not really in a rush to get to be past 2021.
Get through the pandemic quicker. Yeah, I agree.
I did want to dive in like straight to the meat of the conversation without much ado. Going to pass by much too fast. Like I think personally for me. So I did want to start off our conversation with a bit of retrospect. And I think a lot of the people that are in this conversation with us have the same experience in the same way that the pandemic impacted many businesses. And I think for the most part, it had a hand in their move to digital. I wanted to understand how Penshoppe weathered through the crisis that started for all of us, I think, in March. And did it have an impact on how you guys transformed?
Okay. Yep. Yeah, definitely, Burns. I think it's safe to say that the pandemic hit everyone in a lot of different ways, especially retail because of the shutdowns we've had to go through. Fortunately, we were able to get a head start, I guess, for our online e-commerce and whole digital journey.
Mm-hmm.
So the shift to prioritizing and focusing our online business wasn't as difficult as having to start up. It did accelerate and reprioritize a lot of the things we had to do, though. So
Mm-hmm.
we definitely did that last year. We shifted a lot of our attention to as digital as we could, from our products to the way we sold our products to the way we reached our customers.
Right, but I don't think Penshoppe moved to digital, necessarily just last year, right? You guys were already making forays into digital even prior to the lockdown, right?
Right. Yeah.
So did you guys have to accelerate how online you guys had to be or how integrated your online and your retail had to be?
Yeah, that's the right word, Burns. Accelerate. That's really the key word here. Everything got accelerated because of the pandemic. I do remember sometime last year when we had the lockdown starting March. There was a point in time where literally all our stores had to be closed because
Mhm.
nobody knew what was happening. Everything just
Right.
shut down. So if we didn't have our online stores, well, had literally zero sales. So there was definitely a big push to accelerate everything online, and we
Mhm.
saw that. We saw the surge. We saw our growth coming from last year on our online space.
Yeah. And let's face it, right? None of us got a lot of warning. Ibarra, I remember we were in the office on a Monday, right? And we were watching the announcement on what's usually the training TV in the office. And the announcement came Monday, and we all found ourselves working from home on the Tuesday. So uh, how did the brand manage to accelerate so quickly? Like, how did you manage to accelerate the digital that quickly? Like, considering, like, for us it was easy because it's right. For us, we were talking about the logistics of moving easily 200 staff to work from home. But for you guys, how did you guys manage to make the shift so quickly?
Okay. I think we were able to do it fairly quick, but it was definitely not easy. I think you painted the right picture there, Burns. I remember that week when the announcement was made, literally hundreds of our employees in the office were carrying their computers to bring home to be able to work from home.
Mhm.
So the image is very clear in my head. I remember that busy exchange. Um, I think one of the things that was able to help us really accelerate quicker was that we had a lot of the foundations in place.
Mhm.
We had our e-commerce business, we had our online business, we had our online team, our e-commerce team, which who I think tuned in. So hi guys. Um, so we had all of those in place, and it was just a matter of reprioritizing what resources we had and putting them to the
Mhm.
right use to be able to scale our e-commerce business further. It definitely wasn't easy, but I'd like to say the foundations were in place, so that made it a bit easier.
Right. And I remember a conversation with Javi a couple of months ago where he was saying digital transformation wasn't really so much about finding the right provider, choosing the right technology, picking the right tools. He really emphasizes that for LBC specifically, digital transformation was about a transformation in the people and in the culture. Did you guys discover that it was the same thing? Like the biggest challenge or the biggest opportunity, I would say, to overcome or to master was getting your people to be more native to digital, to be more used to digital.
Yep, he's exactly right. I think there's a false impression that when you say digital, you just think about all the online stuff. Everything is,
Mhm.
yep, online. But then we forget to remember that it's people at the end of the day who drive those things, who drive that strategy to go online. So he's exactly right. Going digital is more about change management and managing that change management more than just saying I'm going digital. It's the people at the end of the day. It's our people who drove that shift to go digital.
Right. And there were some early successes, right? I saw some articles like early through the year, how your digital sales had grown a few months, like right after the lockdown. Did the results surprise you guys?
Definitely did. Surprising, but we were very hopeful for it. You're right. We were already experiencing and I think this was the natural rise of e-commerce and online business even before the pandemic hit. when the pandemic hit, though, when online was literally the only way to get goods or to buy goods for yourself, we saw the uptick, and it wasn't just a good thing. It brought in a lot of problems. Also, I do remember that when we experienced the surge, our fulfillment capabilities had to cope up because we weren't used to that level of volume.
Right.
So it definitely brought its own wave of challenges. Also,
Right. So I'm going to bring the conversation more to the omni-channel
sure.
side of the topic, right? Like, take for example, what does a move to omni-channel mean for a brand like Penshoppe or for Golden ABC? But for your brands, what does the move to omni-channel mean for you guys?
Okay. I think omnichannel can mean a lot of things for a lot of different people, right? And we
Mhm.
went through that
Right.
same dilemma. What does omnichannel mean for Golden EBC, and how do we prepare for it? So, in a nutshell, omnichannel for us means marrying and merging both our online and offline worlds, because we still are a primarily a brick and mortar driven company. So, majority of our presence are in physical stores. So to us, that really just means merging that our online world and our offline world. How do we make both
Mhm.
work together really, really well?
Okay. And what would be the long-term goal? Like for let's say Pen Shop's omni-channel, for Regatta, for Oxygen, for all of the brands that you guys run.
Okay, long term goal is to basically just match the natural consumer behavior that we're seeing. That it's
Hmm.
slowly also shifting to using the online and offline worlds in their own ways. Even
Right,
before the pandemic, even before this whole omni-channel buzzword came in, we ourselves as consumers did our research online. We searched for products online and then bought them offline. So our goal is to be able to just keep up and match that customer behavior
right,
and with the way our
right,
customers behave, and just have that ready so that they can buy from our brands, they can experience our brands in any channel that they want to.
right. I think Brian, the challenge for you guys is really the demographic, right? Like take for example, how old is the Pen Shop brand?
Our brands are definitely on, well, we are a 35-year-old company, but our
Right.
target markets are on the younger side.
No, right, exactly, right. Like so I would have said like 20 years ago, Knox 20 years ago, I would have been your target market, right? But clearly I'm not the primary target market anymore. Like at least for Pen Shop, I wouldn't be the target market, although I still go to Pen Shop. Uh, but I wouldn't be your target market anymore. And so your target market, let's say maybe 5 to 10 years ago, would have been millennials,
Mhm.
and then your target market today are Gen Z. And let's face it, my behaviors are very different from a millennial's behaviors, are very different from a Gen Z person's behaviors, right? Where uh like take for example, I think we are the traditional brick and mortar shoppers, like Gen X, still traditional brick and mortar shoppers. We still like the experience of touching the fabric, fitting them in the fitting room and whatnot. Gen Z was more, or sorry, millennials were more digitally adapted.
Mhm.
But then you've got Gen Z today, and they're not digitally adapted. They are digitally native. These guys
True.
don't go online; they live online, right?
True.
And so I think, does that have an impact on in terms of why you have to move omni-channel, or at least why omni-channel is a necessity for the brand?
Yeah, very much so, Burns. At the end of the day, our goal is to serve our customers better, whether they are
Mhm.
millennials, Gen Z, or even the next generation after Gen Z. At the end of the day, our goal is to serve them, be there for them, make our brands be present for them when they need our brands, when they want our brands. And
Right.
I think one big factor that most people don't really see that helps us is that Golden ABC, while being a 35-year-old company, is actually a relatively young company in terms of the people we have. I think in
Mhm.
my e-commerce team, I'm definitely one of the older team members
Wow.
in my team. I'm not surprised if my early 20s, mid 20s, that's probably how old my team is. And that naturally helps us understand the market. Our own
Right.
employees are the market, so
Right.
that makes it
Right.
much easier.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of great sense. There's always this idea though that, brick and mortar and digital somehow are opposing forces. I think in reality they could be very complementary to each other. But I do understand like why there's that sense. Is that a goal? Complementarity of online and offline experiences.
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge we faced, Burns, and I think to a certain extent we still continue to face.
Mm,
I do remember a few years ago, back when online e-commerce, when Lazada just opened in the Philippines, there was a
right.
lot of partially fear about our store, saying, "Oh no, what will the online business do to our offline business, to our stores?"
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely acknowledge that it is a fair fear, because I mean the online business changes the way that we shop, including we might not even go to offline stores anymore if we're able to shop online, right?
Mm-hmm.
One
Right.
key concept that we're trying to interject and really trying to cement into Golden ABC is, we don't want to see it as online or offline. It's not either
Mm-hmm.
or, but it's and. So you have to be able to marry and merge both.
Right.
And we're really trying to do this by trying to make it as friendly as possible for our stores to also understand the online world. One example I'll give you, Burns, is a lot of us shop through marketplaces, right? Shopee,
Mm-hmm.
Lazada,
Yep.
all these big marketplaces. And we recently introduced a way for our customers to be able to easily return and exchange their purchases from Lazada and Shopee in any of our physical stores. So that's something that we recently came up with, and we're now offering to our customers. Just because we know that online and offline shouldn't be competing with each other, but rather working with
Right.
together.
Right. I think there are brands that, I think set a high yardstick, or at least they set the bar really high in terms of these experiences. Like, take, for example, for me in my mind, when I think Nike, I don't really think store anymore. Like my first thought is app, right? Like when I work out, I use the Nike app, and they offer a very integrated experience. So Nike has actually become less of a brand for me and just more integrated into what I do every day. You talked about like entry of Lazada and Shopee into the Philippines. Personally, for me, I would have loved for a Filipino brand to have taken that lead, like let's say 10 years ago. I think the SMs and the Rustanzas and all of the different brands, I think they were great candidates to have taken the lead to move the Filipino population to digital. Unfortunately for us, it took a foreign company like Rocket Internet to come up with Lazada and Zalora and bring them to the Philippines. And I think they set a bar, right? They set a bar for what e-commerce is. I think they let it go critical mass. If I remember the study by Google and Temasek for 2020, there were easily 40 some percent of the of Filipinos that did their first e-commerce transaction last year. That's a huge number. Uh,
True.
so, but I also think though in the retail fashion space, there aren't necessarily leaders. Like in spite of the fact that Zalora is there, I don't think there are necessarily leaders in the omni-channel retail fashion space in the Philippines. At least not the way Shopee and Lazada are paving the way in terms of e-commerce. For Penshoppe, is it a goal? Is it a goal to pave the way or to lead in terms of integrated experience in the fashion retail space for millennials, Gen Z, for your target demographic?
Yep, very much so, Burns. And this is I guess, a sneak peek. When we decided to go through with our omni-channel journey, we had a vision in mind of what omni-channel meant for Golden ABC, and that particular line you just said actually almost mimics what we said. Also, part of our mission, part of our omni-channel vision, is to shape the shopping experiences of the future in the Philippines, and that's
Mm,
exactly our goal. Whatever we're doing now with what we're doing with omni-channel, we don't know whether it's 100% right or 100% wrong. Well, I mean, we're pretty confident in it, but our goal is to be able to influence the way that people shop moving
right,
forward in the Philippines. Yeah.
right. So now I'll take a step back, right? Because I think digital conversations for me they're pretty easy. Digital is very empiric. But I think most of the time it misses the bullseye when it comes to brand identity, brand messaging,
Mm.
target audience. I've seen so many campaigns like they've been running 2, 3 years, And then I would go like, okay, your messaging sounds like this. Who are you talking to? And when I ask people to paint a picture of who their target customer is, it becomes vague, like in terms of digital channels. When Pen Shop moved to digital first, like even before you guys started creating omni-channel experiences, how does a brand go about translating the integrity of its identity from real life to the digital space?
Okay. It Good question. I do remember it was a challenge back then.
Mhm.
I remember a few years ago when I started in the company, I handled the social media side of the brands, and we went through exactly that. Our brands had identities,
Mhm.
images of who they were offline, and how did we translate that to the online world? Like how do you translate a brand promise, a brand message through a photo, through messaging? Um, I think we've definitely learned from that. That is something that we consistently try to keep an eye out for. I think our
Mhm.
brand teams today, we're very fortunate that they now understand that when you say who you are offline is the same person who you have to be online. So we do try to practice that level of consistency where a very straightforward example I'll give you is the way our stores look
Mhm.
offline have to be very similar to the way that our stores look online. You can't have different visual
I
merchandising cues,
noticed. Yeah,
different
I
colors.
noticed.
Yeah. And same thing with the way that our brands sound online and offline. It has to be as
Right.
consistent as possible. And
Right.
I think what really helped is that here in I think one of the unique things with us in Golden ABC is we fully own and operate our own brands. So all the brands that you saw in the video earlier are 100% owned by Golden ABC. So we have
Mhm.
full control over what we want to do and say for our brand. So that definitely helped us maintain a more consistent brand image, whether online or offline.
Yeah, I noticed it's consistent even between your Lazada and your Shopee stores. The look and feel is consistent. The featured products are pretty consistent. That's some terrific management to create a consistent experience regardless of the channel people are interacting with you in.
Right. It's not an easy thing, but it took a while to get up and running. We definitely had
Mhm.
our challenges where okay, that's an old campaign. Why is that still up? And so that kind of things was something we went through before.
Right,
But I think safe to say that again with our brand and online teams today, they have a better understanding of now
right.
replicating online and offline. Yeah.
Right. I would also add, I think digital is very forgiving. The fact that it's never perfectionist, it's very progressive. Like as long as you can actually afford to make mistakes in
True.
in digital, as long as you learn from your mistake and then you do better. Uh,
True.
in digital, a lot of things are empiric. I think it's because it's very data driven, and if you know how to read the data, you know how to move. I think as an example for us, when we help some brands get their digital efforts off the ground, a lot of the brands we know have an idea about the what a better future looks like for them, but they can't really, they can't connect the dots in terms of how do we get from A to B, from B to C, from C to D. And what we usually tell them is, oh no, that's usually easy. The easiest way in digital is to find someone that's already done it, or somebody that's currently doing it better than you do. And what it does is it opens up low hanging opportunities for your business, because digital is relative. If you want to perform better, all you have to do is have the attributes of somebody that already performs better, right? And I think I gave the example of Nike earlier, where the if your primary ecosystem is the app, the store is integrated into it. The store allows you to like it knows if you're a runner, if you do weights, it knows if you play basketball, and the products it offers are always relevant to the exercise habit that
Mm.
that you have. And so, because they managed to get into my personal space, I actually don't mind getting advertised to, like either within the app or via Viber or through my mailbox. So I think they do a good job at keeping me connected with the brand, not necessarily by pushing products on me, but by only pushing products that they think are relative to my
Relevant.
lifestyle, right?
Yep.
But in the end, it revolves around my lifestyle. Uh, for for Pen Shop, I think based off of the goals that you have, and then some of the things that you guys are trailblazing on, like take for example, I purchased something on Lazada, but I return it to Pen Shop. that's not an experience that's offered by other brands. So having talked about relativity, are there brands that you feel set the gold standard for Golden ABC's different brands? Like for Penshoppe, is there somebody that's currently setting the gold standard for you guys in retail fashion in terms of how they integrate their digital and their retail experiences?
Okay, I think safe to say there are definitely a few brands that we keep an eye on. You're right, Burns. Digital is not necessarily new. We don't have to reinvent the wheel
Mhm.
here. We have to contextualize it for the Philippine market, but not
Right?
necessarily reinvent. And this might come off as a very cliche answer, but the Inditex group, the Zara group, is definitely one that we are keeping an eye on,
Hmm.
because other than just having superior products, we also do know that the way that they are able to integrate their entire online offline experience is, if you ask me, one of the global golden standards in the world.
Hmm.
We are keeping our eyes on a few other fashion brands, especially those that might be digital first or actually digital only. I don't know if you've heard
Right.
of the brand called, I don't know how to pronounce it, Shein, Shane. It's a fashion, it's a ladies fashion brand.
Right.
We're also keeping our eyes on them because I think these type of brands, these type of global brands, are doing a lot of very interesting stuff that are not necessarily here yet in the Philippines, but they might not
Right.
even make it at all. But very interesting to look at and learn. Okay, why are they doing these things? What's the value? What's in it for us? So yeah, these are just some brands that we're looking at. The others might even be outside of retail. There are a lot of other brands that we can learn from that might
Right.
not even be in retail or even fashion retail. And
Right. But I think like take for example Zara. I think they're a great yardstick to put simply because that's a
mhm,
brand that was really created to disrupt, right? They were created. I think they even invented the concept of what we now call fast fashion,
fast
right?
fashion.
So
Yep.
they're not necessarily in the same space that you guys are in. I would probably term Pen Shop more as lifestyle fashion for me. Like like if I want to be comfortable, like the look that I want to have every day, for me that is Pen Shop. But for them, they literally do thrive on like fast fashion, like meaning spring and then gone and then
True.
so yeah. But they're a brand that's built to disrupt. I think they are a good brand to keep an eye on. They do a lot of interesting things online. When you guys did your first foray into digital, it would have been, and I still remember several years ago, we didn't have solutions like PayMaya, GCash,
Hmm.
DragonPay, Home Credit, and now even LBC, right? They didn't have payment solutions for online merchants and whatnot. If I remember the World Bank's report correctly, and I think even the Philippine Association of the Credit Card Association of the Philippines has the same figures. Only 3% of the Philippine population has access to credit cards. There are literally only 6.9 million credit cards that are floating around in the country.
Hmm.
And so that means your average credit card holder has two, because only 3% of us. So that's about three
Right.
point something million. Uh, I felt back then it was a big barrier to e-commerce because there were no fintechs, there were no payment solutions. Did you guys did that have an impact in terms of how early you guys felt you could move to digital experiences, or was it not a barrier at all?
It definitely is a barrier, Burns. It is something that we continue to face until today. The whole payment infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's safe to say that majority of our online business here in the Philippines is really still done through cash on delivery. And that's something I will be forever grateful to the likes of Lazada for in
Mm-hmm.
terms of implementing in the country. I do agree with you. It is a pain point on its own. Just from a retailer's perspective, we are sending out and paying for product to be sent out without even getting payment for it yet. So we have an exposure there in terms of
Right.
freight cost. I am hopeful though, because while you are right that fintech was not there before, the amount of fintech companies and brands you can see today sprouting up. Almost every other month, we get a new proposal of, "Hey, we're a new fintech company. Can we work
Yeah.
together?" I am very hopeful that while it is possible that most of our Filipino population will not become banked, I do think that we may be able to leapfrog from cash directly to mobile payments and
Right.
bypass that credit card phase entirely. That is something I'm hoping for, and that is something that I think is possible because at least on our end, we do see the numbers that support it. More and more, the share of mobile payments are increasing. So fingers crossed that we get through that. That's gonna be a joy for us retailers also if we get to have that
Right.
prepaid experience. Yeah.
Right. I think this is a stage where we are a bit behind, but I do agree. I think credit card is not a necessary phase in maturity to e-commerce. I'll go back to something you said, right? And then a portion of the conversation we mentioned earlier where it wasn't really the pandemic that moved you guys to omni and to digital, right? I think the digital and the omni-channel conversation must have happened in Penshoppe way before the pandemic needed to accelerate it. And you were already meeting with some success. So for me, the question is, how did you guys discover that you needed to go omni-channel? How did that conversation get started for Pen Shop, for Memo, for Regatta? How did you guys at
Mm.
Golden ABC begin that conversation for omni-channel?
Okay. It was a longer journey, Burns. It wasn't just a it wasn't just a pre-pandemic. So it wasn't just 2019 where we decided, hey,
Mm,
let's do omni-channel. I think if I had to zoom out entirely, it started when the whole social media thing became mainstream. Back when
mhm,
Facebook was new, everybody was on social media. That's when I think it slowly triggered and it slowly brought to our minds in Golden ABC that okay, digital, online, this entire world is becoming more and more relevant to us as
mhm.
retailers. Where previously, I mean, to be honest, nobody really cared. Okay, you're not on social media. That's fine. That's back then. But you say that
Right.
today, and you don't exist, right? So seeing the way our customers have evolved through social media, I think was one of the first triggering points that made us realize, okay, we need to spend time looking into this whole digital thing. On top of, I think, safe to say, pre-pandemic, everybody was traveling more frequently, the family included. And when we would visit retail stores in the US or in the West, we started to see things like buy here, deliver to your store, deliver to your home, or buy online and then pick it up in the store. So we were very intrigued. Like, how do they do this? How do they do this? How do they offer this concept of buying online, picking up in store, or buying in a store and having it delivered to your home? And more as we started to see that and experience it ourselves when we would travel, we started to see the benefit
Mm,
of having this omni-channel setup, and that's just really where it snowballed, and it's we slowly started to contextualize it here. Okay, how would
right.
this work in the Philippines? How would we be able to do this with our brands? And that's when everything again snowballed. That was when
Right.
we realized, okay, we can't do this if we don't have an online store. So an online strategy came up, and then things followed from there.
Okay, and I don't think those could have happened if, a brand doesn't have the habit of listening to its customers, right? Like, I know that I've worked with some brands where I remember telling them, do you guys need help moving you to social media, like getting you to start listening to social media, being more in touch with your customers on social media? And I remember I'm not gonna name because they're the banks. I'm not gonna name. I'm not gonna name the banks. There's a lot of suspects in our client list, so I'm not gonna name who. But I would essentially say that the conversations went something like this: like, nope, nope, we don't need another customer service channel. No,
Mm-hmm.
no, no social media for us, right? But you guys sort of took the opposite route, right? Where it was sort of like, people are talking to us on Facebook. Okay, so let's talk to them. And then, oh, wait, more people are talking to us on Facebook. And I think for a brand to be listening not just to what your customer is saying, but also to be listening to, where are they talking to you from, is a difference maker. I think the brands that make it, usually these are the ones that really care about their customers. I would like to think so. The brands that
Mm-hmm.
we try to work with, we're very picky. Like, I'm not sure if people know this, but Trulogic's very picky with the clients we work with. Like, we like to believe in the same things, and the people we want to help need to be people that are genuinely interested in the well-being of their client base, of their customer base, and so on and so forth. When you guys were doing research, I think, at the risk of confirmation bias, and I
Mm-hmm.
find myself guilty of this a lot. Like, if I want to prove a point, I usually look for case studies of people that have made it, and I will rarely look for case studies of people that did not make it. Like, did you guys look at that side of the equation too, as you guys were transitioning? Like, okay, so let's do some research. Let's look for brands that, okay, successfully did it, and then let's look for brands that were, oopsie, not for them. Like, was that part of the consideration?
I think so, Burns. I do remember when we were starting with our digital journey, and in a bigger picture, digital is a form of transformation, right? And that's also a
Mm-hmm.
buzzword with everything nowadays. We have to transform. I do remember when we started this our transformation journey that a lot of the case studies we were looking at did exactly that. They pitted a successful company today versus a company that is no longer relevant today, and
Mm-hmm.
the differences of each. The almost cliche Netflix versus Blockbuster
Right.
studies, Fuji versus Kodak, Apple versus Nokia. So those were case studies that we were looking at before, where we were trying to understand more of why did they okay, obviously they have failed, and why did they fail, and it's that system mindset that we want more than just understanding okay they failed. We want to try to ask ourselves, okay, why did they fail? Why did Kodak not get into digital? Why did Blockbuster not get into digital? And those I think
Mm-hmm.
gave us quite a lot of insights and learnings of okay, let's avoid that. Let's not get stuck in our mindset of it'll be brick and mortar forever. It'll be offline forever. So
Mm-hmm.
to answer your question, yes, we definitely looked at those who failed and those who didn't
Mm-hmm.
get to keep up with digital.
What's the critical criteria that you guys use to figure out that you're headed in the right direction? And by the same token, what's the critical criteria for deciding, okay, not for us, right? Again, I'll go back to some examples of clients. And again, I won't name who, but we've had clients that, you know, when apps were a thing, they still are, but they're not as much of a thing now as they used to be. Like everybody had to have an app. And then 2019 conversations, 2020 conversations, and all of the conversations about apps were like, oopsie,
Mm-hmm.
not for us, right? How what's the critical criteria for deciding that a channel, a strategy is right for Pen Shop and the Golden ABC brands?
Okay, I think it boils down to it's something that we believe in. It's our purpose in Golden ABC, and this is we launched a purpose statement a few years ago, and that has been our anchor ever since when it comes to deciding, strategizing whether this is aligned to what we want to do. And it's quite simple. It's we fashion experiences that inspire greatness, and the keyword there is experiences. And
Mhm.
I think that's where we really anchor ourselves on. If we are faced with a question of A or B, we just ask ourselves which one will give the better experience to our customer. And that alone has already given us a lot of direction in terms of what we should, what we shouldn't do. And it's actually
Mhm.
made it a lot easier. I won't lie, there have been quite a lot of very attractive and very tempting strategic decisions for us to do. Should we open this brand? Should we offer this product? Should we go in this channel? Should we do this? And at the end of the day, if it doesn't answer the question of does it give a better experience to our customers or does it allow us to give a better experience, and that's something we tend to walk away from.
Mhm. What about I guess the pandemic, right? Like someday, hopefully sooner rather than later, someday,
Yep.
the pandemic is going to end, and
Yep.
it becomes a story, for that we tell our kids or our grandkids. Hopefully, the only pandemic story we tell our kids and our grandkids. Um, but sooner or later the pandemic is going to end, and it's going to be behind us, and when it's
Mhm.
behind us, is would omni-channel still be the right way to go after that? Like, so clearly we're all locked down, a lot of people work from home, digital delivery, omni, they all make sense. But when people's retail habits, when we don't have to be locked down and some retail habits inevitably return, is omni-channel still the way to go?
Yeah, I think so, Burns, and that pretty much sums up what we think of omnichannel. We think omnichannel is the future of retailing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're right. The pandemic will end. Everything will get back to normal. Hopefully sooner rather than later. People will be back. We'll all be back in malls again. We're gonna go shopping again, and that will stay. And that definitely
Mm-hmm.
will return. But I think this entire pandemic experience, as you mentioned earlier, a significant share of Filipinos did their first online purchase during the pandemic. I
Hmm.
think that experience, that expectation, and that level of standard of being able to do something online, it might not even be purchase online, it might be research, it might be window shopping. Well, I am willing to bet that it will stay because that's where society is developing into. I think it's again
Hmm.
started with social
Yeah.
media. It's e-commerce online now. I don't know what it will be in the future. Is it uh, virtual reality? Will instead of going to the mall in the future, will we be browsing the mall through VR goggles? I don't know,
Right.
but it
Or
is
AR
going down that path.
glasses in a
Yep, yep.
store, right? That would be awesome.
So I think it will stay, and this pandemic has just taught us that time is so valuable to us. Time is gold, and life is short. So if I
Hmm.
can save my time and check stuff online, reserve stuff online, buy stuff online ahead, and just pick it up in a store, I mean, why
Right.
not, right? I think that's something that our customers would learn to appreciate and adopt over time.
Right. For the brands that are listening to us in this conversation today,
Mhm.
I think a lot of the stuff that they're hearing is, Omni is working for Pen Shop, and it definitely has a role to play in the future of both Pen Shop and all of the Golden ABC brands. And so that might tempt them to say, "Oh no, if they can get away with it, like if they can do it, we can do it." But is Omni for everybody?
Good question. Great question. Short answer is no. I think it is a very effective and very realistic strategy for a lot of retailers. But I
Hmm.
also know that there have been retailers in the past, and I think up to today, who have strategically decided, okay, online and omni-channel is not something we want to get into just because it doesn't fit their business model. So I
Right.
think even before, it's very tempting to just say, "Yep, let's do omni. It's the future. Let's go for it."
Right.
I think it still has merit though to assess, like to ask yourselves, to ask your company, should we even do omni-channel? And I mean, do we even do great online? Because
Hmm.
there are, I mean, admittedly, so there are markets out there, maybe the older side that may not really appreciate the entire online world. So why bother going omni-channel for a market that won't appreciate it or a customer that doesn't expect it?
Right.
So I don't think it should be automatic where okay, let's jump to online and omni-channel, but it definitely is a very effective strategy.
Right. Or at the minimum, at least, have the conversation in the brand. But I would
Mhm.
always advise, give it some critical thought and decide if it's for you. Because I think there's a lot of things that go into that, right? The nature of your brand, your customer base,
Yep.
right? Those have an impact in terms of whether omni-channel will work for you or not. What about getting help in terms of the transition to digital, the transformation to digital, moving to omni-channel? How did you guys decide on these guys are the right partners for Pen Shop? These guys are the right partners for Golden ABC.
Okay. Partnerships and the people we work with is a big thing that JBC holds to heart in the way we work with others. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think in our omni-channel case, we are partnering with Aptos Retail, and they are
Mm-hmm.
an existing partner, so that did make it a bit easier for us. We do work with them for their other modules, other solutions, and I think that's where the discernment of JBC comes in. Admittedly, so before we selected Aptos, we did canvass the
Mm-hmm.
market for our other possible partners, and we always looked for those who aligned with us. I mentioned experiences earlier, and it just didn't make sense if we looked for a partner that didn't value experiences as much as we did or as much
Right.
as we would have.
Right.
So it's just a matter of really aligning for us. We found that Aptos in our omnichannel case was the most aligned and most advanced solution we could find. So that just
Mm-hmm.
made it a lot easier to decide.
Okay. What about partnerships with e-commerce channels? Because you guys are partnered with both Lazada and Shopee, right?
Sure.
And your stores clearly somebody is minding them, right? They look almost sinfully consistent, which in my opinion is terrific. Uh, but you guys also have an e-commerce website, and you're right. The e-commerce website is a good reflection of an experience somebody will have in a store. But for some people, they'll think, okay, but you've got an e-commerce website.
Mhm.
Why do you need to channel partner? Why do you need an e-commerce partner?
Yeah. simply put, I think that's the way the market behaves. I would be lying
Mhm.
if I would say that we would be able to survive purely with our own web store. I think it's safe to say that majority of our Filipino population shops through marketplaces, and I think it's a Southeast Asian, an Asian thing.
Right.
China
I
drives it,
agree.
versus the West, where they are more used to going direct to brand. So I think it wasn't a question of whether we should do it. I mean, it was a given that we had to do it. I think the challenge more of now is, as we move into the omni-channel experiences more, the big question is, how do we involve the likes of our e-commerce partners, Shopee, Lazada, into our whole omni-channel experience? One version of that is the return policy I mentioned earlier. So if you
Right.
buy something online, you can still come back to our stores. We're not gonna send you away and say, "Hey, that's not from our web store. You can't return that here." We are welcoming that, and I'd like to. I don't know if anyone from Shopee or Lazada is also opening, but if you guys are open to working with us in terms of the whole omni-channel offline online thing, let me know and we can talk. I'm very much willing to see how we can
Mhm.
work it out.
Sounds good. I actually have like a ton more questions, but we've got a ton of questions, and I promised people I would save the last 10, 15 minutes. I actually only have the last 10 minutes now for everybody else, and I do want to be fair and treat this like a conversation. So for everybody that sent in the questions, thanks. Let's start digging into the questions
Sure.
that are from the crowd. So the
Sure.
first question we got was, how do you segment your target market from millennials versus Gen Z, uh, and still stay consistent with and still stay consistent or still be appealing to both, right? How do you segment between the Gen Z and the millennial, and still be equally appealing to both?
Okay, I think that's where I'm coming from the brand perspective, and this is where product management comes in. The way we introduce or the different product lines that we offer, I think is going to be where how we differentiate between Gen Z and the more millennial market. I think safe to say, Burns, for people our age, you can see it. We like basics. We like simple,
Right,
solid color stuff, and then as you go younger, you're more open and forward with, I guess, more graphic photos, more graphic
right.
images and stuff.
Something
Um,
bolder, but
right.
definitely
So
comfortable fabric.
yep. So we do have that aspect from our brands where they do cater specific product lines to a certain age segment or a certain market segment. And I think that's worked pretty well. We do that from a brand level, yet we also do that from a golden ABC level. So, for example, our brand Regatta is not may not be for the teenager, early 20s market, but
Mhm.
may be able to push up from the 20s to 30s to maybe even
Right.
40s. So we do try to manage it from a group level, but also from a brand product level.
Okay. Another question that we got was, how are you guys discovering the contribution between the offline and online and offline activities for your brands, right? In terms of revenue contribution to the brand, how much heavy lifting is online doing? How much heavy lifting is retail doing?
I think it's a very common question we get.
Mhm.
Without giving too much information, I think pre-pandemic, safe to say that our online share of business was in the low single digits.
Mhm.
I think this was the industry average, industry standard. With the shifts we're able to make, and fortunately so, in the pandemic today, we're now in the significant double-digit range
Wow.
in terms of share. Significant enough that, yeah, the online business is now part of our Mancom meetings, of our performance reports.
Wow. Wow. Another question was, where do you guys think the future of retail is headed? Like the future of retail, brick and mortar stores is headed.
Okay, I did mention this earlier. Omni-channel is um,
Mhm.
one feature that I think will become the norm. And experiences will be the next big thing that will be determining
Mhm.
whether retailers will be successful or not. Those with good experiences across the board will be that's going to be the future.
Okay. What about so let's talk relationships. Another question here was, so being omni-channel, you have online partnerships, but you also have
Mhm.
retail partnerships, right? So in the same way that you have relationships with Shopee and Lazada, there's a Shopee person in the audience. So when you said if
Great.
they're here and they want a partner, talk, I think they will reach out to you. Uh, so one of the questions here, I think it's a great question because we talked about partnerships and what the critical criteria is for deciding on who the partner is.
Mhm.
But when you guys moved to digital, did your brick and mortar retail partners express any sentimentality about feeling threatened about the volume you are moving to online, or no, was there just really, oh, we understand, go for it?
Very good question. Without while still being, I guess, democratically right, and politically right, it is a challenge that we do continue to face with our I guess I'll call them mall partners. I don't
Mhm.
think they are threatened. They aren't threatened, but I do understand where they're coming from. Where if we do omni-channel, for example, if something is bought
Mhm.
online and something is picked up in one of their malls, they are part of the equation, right? They are part of the experience. And I think my argument has always been, look, we're in this together. At the end of the day, our goal is to drive them to our stores, which happen to be in
Right.
your malls. If we as brands are able to drive traffic to our stores in your malls, how can it be a lose scenario for us? I think it's a win-win in that case where we
Mhm.
make a sale, whether it's online or offline, and people are going to your malls, to our shops in your malls. That's always been my position when it comes to positioning this omni-channel strategy. And fortunately, so far, I think the malls or mall partners have been pretty open, and they have also been participating. They've been doing their own omni-channel efforts, I think. Um, it's just that it goes back to that for me. Involve the malls. Don't shun them away, and don't say, "Hey, this is my
Mhm.
store. I can do whatever I want with it." Involve them and make them feel like they're part of the experience that you're putting forward. I think that's gonna work.
Another question that got thrown in here, I think this one gets asked a lot, like maybe 5 out of 9 now, is like for example, for us, even in our experience, it's rare that we have clients that have an empirical way of getting to their digital budget, right? For a lot of
Mhm.
them, they canvas around, they get a feel, they pitch a budget, they allocate it for the year, and then that's that.
Mhm.
But for you guys, how do you guys decide on what is the share of the marketing budget for the digital channel, and what is the share of the marketing budget that goes to traditional channels?
Hmm. Great question, and something again we continue to face until today. Um, Without revealing too much of our formulas or
Mhm.
techniques that we apply, I think what I'd like to share is there, and I think you're familiar with this, Burns. There is that older saying where half of my marketing budget is working, but I don't know which half.
Mhm.
In digital, kind of throws that away because in digital you know exactly what is working
Right.
and how much it's giving you, and I think that has made the decision so much easier on our end where we definitely started small. Okay, digital budget was a very very tiny share of our overall marketing budget, but
Mhm.
then we get to show the numbers for it where traditional marketing, traditional advertising may not necessarily have. So that's how it started for us, and it eventually grew from there. We were able to show the numbers, we were able to show the performance, and it picked up.
Right. So for me, what I'll share is what we teach our clients to do when it comes to their digital is it always begins for us with the question of how much revenue are you looking to drive how much revenue are you looking to drive with your digital effort? And our recommendation is always roughly about be prepared to spend 5% of the revenue you expect to make, right? Like this is how we teach them. Because for
Mhm.
us, like, say, for example, as a marketing provider, for us, we feel like it's a fail if you cannot generate 1:18 at the minimum on average,
Mhm.
1:20. Like we
Mhm.
like getting people a return of $20 for every dollar spent, right? So it's less about here's your overall budget. Digital has to be 25% of it. Digital has to be 50% of it. Digital has to be 12% of it. What we normally say is, what share of revenue would you like digital to do? Like, what is the goal for digital revenue, or at least the sales that are attributed to digital? And we work backwards to figure out what budget you throw at it. So that's normally how we like to go about it. It just becomes more challenging when sometimes the goal is vague, because
Mhm.
there can be
True.
vague goals. Like
Yeah.
with the real estate, I hate getting I hate getting just drive more traffic. No, I want to know how many condos you want to sell using the digital channel, right? Or at least how many people you want to talk to. That's what I want to know because then it's
Agree.
easy for me to work the math backward.
Agree.
Um, so here's a semi-controversial question. It's a question, but I'll translate it a bit to a question that I think our founder and our senior partner has always asked of me. Um, so we talked about you guys primarily beginning as brick and mortar, moving into digital. Clearly, traditional channels for advertising and for marketing are working for you, and clearly digital channels are working for you. But there are brands that are purely digital. Like take for example for us, Truelogic is entirely digital. There are no physically tangible goods. Would brands like us, would purely digital brands, would purely digital companies also benefit from employing some of the traditional playbook versus just having the mindset, oh, we're digital, so we'll advertise digital only. Because I think most businesses are like that. Like when they're traditional, there's no digital advertising. When they're digital, there's no traditional advertising. But would a brand like let's say Truelogic benefit from more traditional marketing activities and not just rely solely on digital channels?
In short, Burns, yes. And
Mm,
this is seen through the bigger digital first brands. I mean, Amazon and Whole Foods. That's a very very safe example to use. Amazon Go. They are building their offline stores. There is an element that the offline world can bring that the online world cannot. And I think online only digital first brands can understand this, and
mhm,
offline brands like primarily like ourselves or other retailers there should take advantage of this. And that's precisely
mhm.
why the online and offline worlds with omnichannel has to meet and they have to marry.
Right.
So short answer, yes.
Yeah. Last question. So last question that we have to insert before we run out of time.
Sure.
How do you manage potential insecurities that might be felt by your staff in the stores, especially when you transition to digital? Like how do you manage that? Because they're not going to tell you, right? Unless your staff are like that, where they tell you, Brian, this digital thing, am I going to lose my job? I'm not sure how many staff you have that are that straightforward. In my experience, Filipinos, not that straightforward. um, but how did you guys address that?
Yep. So it's very similar to my answer earlier about involving the mall partners. What we
Mhm.
like to do is we involve our stores. Um, During this entire process of our omni-channel project, our store team, our sales store team, has been a significant part of coming up with that solution. At the end of the day, to us, whether it's sold online or offline, it still goes to the company, right? But understandably so,
Mhm.
the offline stores will feel like, hey, I can no longer make a sale if it's sold online. And that's
Right.
precisely, in a weird way, why this current arrangement of cash on delivery and pick up offline works. Because at the end of the day, when a customer picks up an item or an order offline and they pay in the store, the sales go to that store anyway. So to
Right.
us, that's a big factor that's going to be helping us involve our store staff more, where we say, hey, our goal here is to drive traffic to you guys, so they pick it up and pay for it in your stores. Sales goes
Right.
to you guys, no problem with us. Keep the sales. So that's something that we have been able to implement, and so far it's been pretty successful. I think the
Mhm.
the core here has been we've really involved our store staff from getting their thoughts, getting their inputs, involving them with the entire omni-channel project. That has really helped us kind of tide them over to be very open to this whole online offline world. Yep.
Wow. Okay. And with that, I'll end the conversation there because that's a good thought to have. I think ending the conversation either from the customer's perspective or the people in the company's perspective is a great way to wrap up a conversation. For those of you that joined us, I hope you got as much out of this as I did. For me, these are genuinely learning experiences as well. Like I hear a lot of new stuff in these conversations. They eventually wind up to the way we work as a company. But I hope I did good on the afternoon. Brian, thank you again so much for joining us today. And for everybody, I hope you join us again on the next True Logic DX. One more virtual round of applause for Brian. Thank you for the
Thank
insight
you.
today.
Thank you,
I,
Burns.
I
Thank you,
really
everyone. Thank you.
appreciate it. The only regret I have is we only have an hour, but super appreciated everybody else. Thank you very much. We'll see you on the next DX.